So we all know that AI is everywhere today, right? And the thing is, it's changing our future rapidly, very, very rapidly, right? And today's panelists are living this change every day, right? So, and we have to get in front of that change, definitely, right? And today's panel is being moderated by Dr. Ramayya Krishnan. He is the Dean of Heinz College of Information Sciences and Public Policy at the Carnegie Mellon University. And he is the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award from IIT Madras. And he's currently chairing the AI Futures Group of the National AI Advisory Committee to the President and White House Office of AI Initiative. Please welcome our phenomenal panelists and our moderator. Thank you.
Good morning. How are you all doing? Excellent, excellent. My name is Krishnan. Thanks, Beju, for that kind introduction. Really looking forward to a discussion about AI today, and I know many of you are working in this area and keen to engage on this topic. So let me have my colleagues join me. Alka Patel, who's formerly of the Jake at DoD. Ashish Bansal, from Core ML Engineering Leader at Google. Binny Gill, who is the founder CEO of Kognitos, and Shivani Govil, the product leader at Google. So what's really cool about this group here is it's really multidisciplinary, multiple points of view and perspectives about AI. From the standpoint of law, from the standpoint of startups, from the standpoint of having worked in large companies on the application side as well as on core engineering. And my own background spans engineering and public policy. So really looking forward to a great conversation. I think I'm going to join them up here rather than sit up, stand by the lectern. So we're going to do this in a way that permits actually a fairly informal conversation to come about. And I'm going to kick things off with a question that I'm going to ask Shivani to respond to first. We'll do a round of questions, and then I hope we'll have some time for questions from the audience as well. That sound like a good plan? Okay, all right. So, we're all old enough here, at least some of us, I'll speak for myself, having gone through multiple generations of AI. And when I did my PhD thesis, it was on expert systems, and today here we are with generative AI. This somehow feels different. And Shivani, what do you think feels different about what you're seeing today in this generation of AI? Thanks, Shivani. Do others want to just weigh in quickly on this topic as well?
Sure, no, happy to. So I'll take this from a little bit of a risk management perspective. That's sort of my background. But if we look at it from an operational or an organizational perspective, sort of two things stand out. One is that it requires organizations to think and operate differently. And so one aspect is we know this is now an interdisciplinary conversation and effort, right? So AI really is a team sport. So it's not just about the designers or the developers. We need those end users in the conversation right at the beginning. We need policymakers. We need all kinds of technical and other types of disciplines, including legal as well. So I think that's point number one. The second point is sustained attention, and there's probably a better way to say that. That's what I came up with in terms of the aspect that this technology is not static. We know that, right? It's dynamic, and so this isn't something where it's one and done. This is something where we know that the technology is evolving, the context is changing, right? The data inputs could be very different, and so we need to make sure that organizations are creating whether it's roles, whether it's departments, whatever the structure needs to be, such that there's continuous monitoring of these technologies. So when they go awry, and we think about societal issues where there are unintended consequences that impact people's lives in a meaningful way, that there's someone to say, hey, wait a second, we gotta stop, or we gotta do something different. We need to go back and look at this technology. So I think that's the other piece. And then the last point I'll just make real quick is more from a societal perspective. And so I'm going to bridge some of my prior work experience into this one. But right now, there are, or as of last year, there are 42 million people in the US who do not have access to the internet. And so my concern is that we are now going to create an AI divide, right? So we talk about a digital divide. Well, those folks who aren't connected are now not going to have access to AI technologies that we all take for granted in some cases, right? And so 2 points along that vein is that if we don't address the digital divide conversation, then we're not going to get to the AI and get the benefits of the AI aspect. So when we're talking about economic prosperity around folks getting access to jobs, when we're talking about healthcare access, they're not going to have that unless we address the digital divide. The other piece of this, I'll just say briefly, is that it changes our relationship with trust. And I know we're going to all talk about trust at some point, but there was a report that was done last year that said people don't use the internet, not because they don't have access to it, but because they don't trust it, or they don't have a trusted partner to teach them how to use that, right? And that also extends to AI, by the way, and especially when we're talking about, not anyone in this room, I'm sure, but like when we're talking about different types of economic groups or social groups, whether it be from an age perspective, veterans, and so forth. And so I think that's something from a societal perspective we need to address.
Binny.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you on this important topic. AI is here for real. I believe it's going to change the world very rapidly. And I want to talk about the opportunity in front of us and also a big challenge and how I think we could address the challenge. To explain both the opportunity and the challenge, let me use an analogy, right? Have you guys seen the movie Iron Man? Few of you? Okay. So Tony Stark created two things: the most powerful mechanical system in the world, the Iron Suit, and then the most intelligent computer system called Jarvis. Now he had the opportunity of taking the two together and creating an autonomous system and giving it the charter of saving the world. And of course, he could have worked on the governance and removing hallucinations and guardrails and all of the testing. But he decided to get into the damn suit. Question is why? It's because it takes a human to decide what is right and what is wrong. Now, we are going into a world where all of us will have the opportunity of being Iron Men or Iron Women, right? How do we get into the suit? AI is being deployed at a very rapid pace. We should not just deploy it, we need to control it. So what does it mean to get into the suit is what I want to talk about. Today, AI is going to control the physical and digital world around us. The way AI controls the computers around us is by writing code. We saw it yesterday. It wrote 10 lines of code in Python. What did we all do? Arguably the most technical audience in the world. We said, no, we don't want to see Python. Show English. That is both the problem and the solution. The problem is there are only 25 million people in the world who are capable of reading that Python and telling you, is it safe or not safe? And very few of them even want to read it. There are billions of people who want to read natural language and can tell you whether it is safe or not safe. So the act of getting into the suit of AI is about inserting yourself, not just a few developers in the world, but I'm starting with you guys. Please insert yourself in the suit where you build systems where every human in the planet can actually see what the AI is going to do, review that, and then say whether it's safe or not, and then give it to a diligent system like all the computers we know so far. And that system should not hallucinate, should not daydream or whatever. And by being in the suit is how we can enable a future where AI can be super powerful and yet safe for us. It's not about building responsible cars or building responsible AI. It's about making humans responsible for driving those cars safely, driving AI safely. And that's the future, I think, rapidly also evolving, and I'm super excited to be here, but we need all the help you can give.
Thanks, Binny. I love that example. When I saw Iron Man, I didn't know we were going to be discussing this at Pan IIT, but it's a very compelling example. I want to turn to Ashish, the point you were making about the going from intent to action and how it empowers people perhaps without a technical background. If you could think about what's a compelling application where you think AI could generate value on account of this? Optimistically, where's the real opportunity?
Yeah.
What might that be? Terrific. Now, in all of this, I mean, it'd be good, and let's put a pin on this and come back to it, hopefully in the Q&A, is typically when you have new technological change, you see initially incremental use of the technology for improving existing business processes. And here you heard some examples of completely re-envisioning the way in which work is done. The other thought that I had was none of the examples really talked about what I would think of as really consequential applications, like healthcare or things of that nature. So let me segue to a question about potentially risks and challenges. We have 2.5 billion people going to elections this coming year, and one question that keeps coming up is about misinformation, disinformation. We have lawsuits against OpenAI and others with regard to copyright and IP infringement. Maybe I'll ask Alka to kick things off and then Binny to go next. Alka, what are your thoughts on what are the potential risks and challenges and how might we address them?
That's $1 million question, right?
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think we figured that one out, at least not in the US. And we've talked a little bit about this before too, and I think we all understand that the pace of technology is moving more rapidly than regulation or the legal system in the US can keep up with, right? And even with these cases now, by the time they get heard and adjudicated, the technology is even going to be more advanced. And I think that's sort of the concern, and especially on the copyright issues. We're seeing a lot of those types of cases, whether it's from the Writers Guild, whether it's around digital, or it's around photography, digital art. A lot of those, especially most recently New York Times in December. And I think, there's the expectation that, hey, this is fair use. But I think the concern is, the courts, and neither has the Copyright Office determined whether or not using copyrighted material as training data actually constitutes fair use, right? And so I think, this is my pie in the sky. I think at some point where I see this going is that you're either going to get judges who are not experts in this area, perhaps, making rulings and setting precedent for what happens in these types of situations, which could be a little bit unnerving. The other piece is the Copyright Office. They put out a notice for open comments around how to deal with some of these issues. The Copyright Office could do a revamp of copyright law because of technology, right? That's going to take time. That doesn't happen overnight. And again, because technology is moving so fast, it may already be outdated. And so how do you create sort of this flexible framework around this? So I think there's a lot of those types of issues, IP issues, liability issues, right? As designers, developers, who's liable for the outcomes of an end user that the consequences, Krishnan, that you were even talking about. So I think all of those issues, unfortunately, don't have a clear path to resolution. A lot of different stakeholders included, and when we talk about regulation as well, one of the things that I think about is look at privacy regulation in the US, right? We can't even agree on a federal privacy regulation, and what ends up happening is you've got states doing sort of patchwork of regulation within their own jurisdictions, and for organizations that are working across states, working across countries, that is a very difficult place to be. And so we see this happening right now with AI between New York, Maryland. Some of these states are already doing their own legislation around AI. And so when we think about it from a compliance perspective, doing business perspective, that becomes really challenging. And I think, another example is the EU Act that will take effect in 2026. But I think that's going to force and maybe shape some of what happens in the US.
Thanks, Alka. In fact, I'm headed to Davos tonight, and one of the key aspects is this issue of the EU AI getting harmonization, so to speak. Binny, your thoughts on these challenges and ways potentially of mitigating them?
Yeah, so 100% agree with what Alka is saying. I think from a technologist and engineering point of view, I feel that we can help the regulators with regulating AI by building systems that are built in a different way. So let me give you an analogy again from the industrial age and see how it applies here. In the industrial age, what were we doing? We were taking manual labor we do with our arms and legs, and we are offloading it to machines. Now those machines became a lot more powerful than a single human. but they didn't look like humans. We built cars that had 4 wheels, not 2 legs, right? And elevators that were, had a rope, not arms and legs to climb the stairs, right? So what we need to understand is, if we want to give power to a machine, it is okay to make that power narrower. So I am a big proponent of artificial narrow intelligence, not general intelligence, so that you can then figure out what the guardrail should be. There's a massive freight train that goes behind my house, but it's the guardrails, there are 2 rails, right? I don't worry about flight traffic control. If the train is going, it cannot even fly. It just has small wheels that it can go. If it was a giant robot with all kinds of flexibility, I would be worrying about a lot more, and the people in Davos will have a bigger problem to deal with. So as engineers, we need to understand it's okay if the technology doesn't look like humans. In fact, transcending human weaknesses is what we have done really well in the mechanical age. In the mental age, we can do the same thing. Build the best finance brain, but it's okay if it has biases and hallucinates with other things. And build something that is very good at physics and chemistry, and then give the steering wheel to the human, who is the orchestrator, the puppeteer, or the Iron Man in the suit, and says, okay, I'm going to take these things, stitch them together, and solve a bigger problem for humanity. So that's what I think as technologists we can give to the regulators to make the job easy.
Thanks, Binny. This is sort of, those questions were a warm-up act, so that I hope we'll get some questions from the audience as well. And I know there is an app via which you could submit questions. So one question relates to AI literacy more broadly, which relates to, Binny, your point about how do we get to teach members of society to be more literate about AI, not an audience like this, but more generally. Any thoughts on that? Do you want to start with that?
I could go, but I spoke about it, but I just equate it to riding the horse. When humans found horses, you would ride it. You don't read books about how to ride a horse. You just ride a horse. So all I tell people, go use AI, and over time you'll learn the machine, and then that's your new workhorse. Yep. That's all I'll say.
What about some others who want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in.
Yeah.
So from an organizational perspective, when I used to be at the DoD, this was one of our biggest issues, is how do you get a collective workforce at a point of understanding what AI is? Not everyone needs to be that developer, right? They don't need in all the zeros and ones. I'm not a computer scientist, and I know enough to know what questions to ask, and that's something we talked about a little bit earlier. And so what we had done is we had basically broken up the workforce in terms of different archetypes and what level of understanding does each archetype have to have, right? So a senior leader needs to know enough about AI to understand there are risks and ask those kind of questions. The designers, the developers, the test and evaluators have a different level and depth of understanding, right? And so I think part of this is customizing the level of understanding for the audience type, and then sort of scaling that across an organization. And I will just say too, same on digital literacy. When we're out there trying to get people to understand how to turn on a computer, how to get to the internet, similarly, you kind of start small and then you sort of build on that progression. But I think the point is that everyone needs, AI is impacting our lives in so many different ways, that everyone needs to have at least a basic core understanding. And then in tandem, maybe this is where regulation comes in terms of some transparency requirements, which can then sort of work in a reverse function of education, where people are seeing something and says, oh, AI is being utilized, and maybe that sort of prompts them to go learn more.
Can I give a counter to the counter?
Please, by all means.
I was going to do that, but
So very quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Benny.
Just the
keep it short so that we can go to one other question that has
just
come
the doctor thing. I think doctor to me is a superhuman AI. Somehow figures out what I have, but I don't let the doctor just without telling me cut me up and fix me, right? I expect the doctor to explain in my language, in a way that I understand what's my problem and how I can fix it, and it's up to me to decide. Not tomorrow, it's my kid's birthday, I'll come back on Monday, and doctor saying you're stupid. I say it's my choice. I have the steering wheel. Then I go to the pharmacist. Pharmacist say give me that. Pharmacist is more diligent. doesn't look at me and say, I know, doctor is wrong, I think you have COVID. No. So the pharmacist follows the instructions, and I think that's what it means to take control of AI, have AI explain to you exactly what it's going to do, then go to the pharmacist and say, hey, do it. If you have any questions, let me know. That's the concept.
Yeah. So as you can see, we promised a very eclectic panel with high entropy in the discussion, and you can see that on display. So I want to segue from some of the points that you all made to using moderator's privilege to bundle a couple of questions, and it has to do with both technology and also maybe new developments like the Perplexity answer bot that's been released by actually another IIT alum. This question of hallucination, bias, how do we get trusted responses from the AI? Can anything be done about the technology to address that? And Ashish,
demographic.
That's terrific. Now, I mean, Sal Khan's work, for instance, is a very compelling application of the use of AI in education. You heard about Professor Poshan Low yesterday from Carnegie Mellon speak about education. I want to come back, in terms of thinking ahead and thinking about the future. We've talked about technology. We've talked about safety issues. Do you see changes fundamentally in some business models on account of these developments in AI? Shivani, you want to take that kick off? And in these developments that you're saying, are the economics of how the current generation of AI is working sustainable, or are there ways in which it could be made more sustainable? Any one of you want to take that? Thank you, Ashish. Did you have a comment on that, Alka?
Yeah, I was just going to add on, maybe from a different perspective, which is like from an organizational perspective of trying to operationalize and trying to integrate all of this into an organization. I mean, I think from an economics perspective, I think businesses have to rethink how they budget for AI, for the technology, for the people. Right, you're going to need new talent, and where are you going to get this talent from, and how are you going to, or train existing, retrain? And Krishnan, I know you're an expert on this in terms of, you talk about future work, but the talent piece is one that cannot be understated enough in terms of how critical that is from a monetary perspective. And then tools, right? So these tools, whether it's to flag biases or detect biases, to do the testing and so forth, I think there's a lot of economics that changes within an organization, and not to mention the compliance piece where I shared earlier. And the last thing I'll just say on that too is, when I was at the DoD, a lot of our technology was acquired. And so how do you sort of reconcile the interoperability question in terms of, is the technology that's coming in meeting some of our internal organizational requirements from a safety perspective, a testing perspective? Does it satisfy all these other needs? So I just think that, like, from an organizational perspective, companies have to rethink how they budget, because this isn't just like software development or just a static technology, and it's going to require a lot more resources.
So, folks, we're getting close to the end of our time, so I'm going to do a rapid-fire round with our experts here. Given the work that you are doing, what is it? Give everybody a sense of what is it that you're doing, and what are you really looking forward to in the near term, next 2 to 5 years. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Binny, let's start.
Maybe I can start. Yeah, we're just putting everybody in the Ant-Man suit, but making it more concrete. The human brain has logic and intuition, and we need both. For hallucination, the biggest antidote for hallucination is logic. When you wake up from a dream, you say, hey, that didn't make sense, you're using logic. For the last 70 years in computer science, we have built logic. We should not throw it away just because now we have AI that can do 1 + 1 and use a trillion flops to do that. We need a combination of the two, a marriage of the two, and using logic makes it more efficient, power efficient, also reduces hallucinations. And using intuition gives you all the power and creativity. Let's use the two together in a more responsible way. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. That's an exciting one in terms of going from digital to physical. And all jokes apart, I think many people don't like washing clothes or cleaning dishes or whatever. So, Alka.
Yeah, I'll take one of those robots too. Maybe more than one. My kids need one. Yeah, so my work was in responsible AI, so I think a lot of what excites me is looking at what's happening globally from a regulatory perspective and seeing how that gets all reconciled so that we're really intentional about the society and the humanity that we want to make sure continues in terms of our values and what we really want to see our future generations grow up in. And so I think that is really what excites me. And the one other one is on the healthcare side. I think what AI could potentially do in terms of speeding up some solutions to some really hard healthcare questions, I think could also have a really significant impact on society. So that's really exciting.
Shivani? Thank you all. So folks, thanks again for joining us. We managed to get a few of your questions in to this wonderful panel. Please join me in thanking them. And what's that?